The Battle of Faith is the title of our message, taken from First Samuel chapter 13. And we have two thoughts: the overwhelming enemy, verse 1 to 6, the want of faith, verse 7 to 23. The Christian life is a life of faith in the living and true God. Paul wrote in the book of Hebrews when he said, "But without faith it is impossible to please him. For he that cometh to God but must believe that he is God, and that he is a rewarder of them that diligently seek him." The Christian faith is an active energy that finds satisfaction in trust in the Lord and walking obedience to his word. Matthew 5 verse 6 says, "Blessed are they that do hunger and thirst after righteousness, for they shall be filled." The enemy always seeks to undermine and compromise the faith of God's people by enticing him to disobey the known will of God. Adam and Eve fell when they were enticed by the serpent to disobey the known will of God. That one lapse was enough to plunge man into irrecoverable misery, had it not been for the mercy of God. The rescue process involves God personally taking upon himself human sin in the person of his only begotten Son, Jesus Christ. It was a heaven and earth moving endeavor. It manifests in the coats of skin that God gave to Adam and Eve to allay their fear, guilt, and to cover their nakedness. In our text, we saw King Saul disobeying the will of God to offer sacrifices. It was appointed for the priest to offer sacrifices. King Uzziah later on intruded into the holy place to give sacrifice, and the Lord struck him with leprosy, and he died a leper. The prophet Isaiah recounted the tragedy when he met with the Lord in Isaiah 6 verse 1, in the year that King Uzziah died. So the year he died was the year when Isaiah met with the Lord in his throne room, the Lord sitting upon a throne high and lifted up, and his train filled the temple. It was a horrible sight to see Uzziah dying, and for Isaiah, well, he was brought to the temple of God, and there he freezed there. He didn't dare to do anything because he knew that doing anything out of line would incur the wrath of God. So he waited there in the throne room of God, for God to first cleanse him and then later to send him to be the Lord's prophet. We have been studying the book of Isaiah in our prayer meeting, and we are actually closing the book soon. We are at the second part of 65, chapter 65 tonight, and then we would go to chapter 66, which will be the last chapter of the book. God sent Isaiah to the people of Israel who were want of faith. Well, when King Saul offered the sacrifice, it was likened to the sons of Eli, who brought the ark to fight the Philistines and were defeated. When a person failed to see that the battle is the Lord's, or is of the Lord, and began to wage the warfare in the strength of the Lord, he will fail. Our Lord himself explained in Matthew 17 verse 22, "And Jesus said unto them, Because of your unbelief, verily I say unto you, if ye have faith as a grain of mustard seed, ye should say unto this mountain, Remove hands to yonder place, and it shall remove, and nothing shall be impossible unto you. Although Saul's army was small, with God's help, the enemy is never too small to defeat. The army is never too small to defeat the enemy. His army of 2,000 was of greater number than that of Gideon's army. You remember in the book of Judges, the Gileadite army were also very large, very huge, hundreds of thousands, and they were like ants crawling all over, and the battle was unequal, very much unequal. But Gideon won the day with his 300 men. Why would Saul lose the battle if he had God with him? Verse 1 to 6, the overwhelming enemy. Saul reigned 1 year, and when he had reigned 2 years over Israel, Saul chose him 3,000 men of Israel, whereof 2,000 were with Saul in Michmash and in Mount Bethel, and 1,000 were with Jonathan in Gibeah of Benjamin, and the rest of the people he sent every man to his tent. And Jonathan smote the garrison of the Philistines that was in Geba, and the Philistines heard of it, and Saul blew the trumpet throughout all the land, saying, Let the Hebrews hear. And all Israel heard that Saul had smitten a garrison of the Philistines, and that Israel also was had in abomination of the Philistines. And the people were gathered together after Saul to Gilgal, and the Philistines gathered themselves together to fight with Israel, 30,000 chariots, 6,000 horsemen, and people as the sand which were on the seashore in multitude. But they came up and pitched in Michmash, eastward in Beth-aven. When the men of Israel saw that they were in a strait, for the people were distressed, then the people did hide themselves in caves and in thickets and in rocks and in high places and in pits. The army that was gathered when Israel fought the Philistines were 300,000 men. 1 Samuel 11 verse 7 to 8 we saw, and he took a yoke of oxen and hewn them in pieces and sent them throughout all the coasts of Israel by the hand of messengers, saying, Whosoever cometh not forth after Saul and after Samuel, so shall it be done unto his oxen. And the fear of the Lord fell on the people, and they came out with one consent. And when he numbered them in Bezek, the number of Israel were 300,000, and the men of Judah 30,000. Jonathan had 1,000 men who with faith spoiled the Philistines, whereas Saul was unable to garner the men of Israel to fight the battle. It was strange that Saul would call the people of Israel Habiru or Hebrew, strange people, people of a strangers in a foreign land. The first design of Saul and Jonathan was to free the land from the garrisons which the Philistines had in it, and they first began to clear their own country of Benjamin. So the battle began there in Benjamin, and Jonathan succeeded in with his small army to defeat the enemy, and the count of the enemy was great. We are told that they had 300,000 men, or they had 30,000 chariots chariots and 6,000 horsemen, 30,000 chariots. That's a very big number for an army. These are like the modern tanks that we can speak about. So imagine 30,000 chariots. That means they had really good weaponry, armory. And today, armory speaks the best, isn't it? So recently, Russia made an announcement that now they have the ultimate missile. The ultimate missile is not just able to carry nuclear warheads with it, but it is also nuclear powered. So a missile that is nuclear powered and with nuclear warhead, you see, a normal missile has a solid state fuel, and solid state fuel is such that you burn and 12,000 kilometers, that's the entire width of the earth, the entire breadth of the earth, and the fuel exhausts, and the missile stops and drops, and that's it. And that's how it is. But with a nuclear powered missile, the missile is able to fly at a very low altitude, below 100 meters. And so the radars cannot detect. Radars all look up. And so the missile would be able to travel anywhere without being detected. And because it is nuclear powered, it can almost function infinite time. So the enemy will be very afraid, isn't it? Your radars cannot detect the missile comes to your coastline, and the enemy has a choice when to activate the missile. So it can be at your doorstep, just outside. So of course, when the US has submarine, nuclear submarine, those were very lethal, because the submarine can hide itself in the vast ocean and nobody is able to detect where it is. So anytime when it can launch a weapon, and then the enemy will be taken by surprise. So when you have overwhelming firepower with great strength, you frighten your enemy. And this is what is going on here. The Philistines had great might and great power. He's able to threaten Israel with the 30,000 chariots and 6,000 horsemen. So, and the people as the sand in the seashore. So a big army that is there confronting Israel, and they were afraid. Verse 6 tells us that when the men of Israel saw that they were in a strait, for the people were distressed, then they hide themselves in caves and in thickets and in rocks and in high places and in pits. You see, earlier in the previous chapter, the people of Israel demanded for a king, just like the Ammonites, who had a king to lead them to battle. But here you notice that the army of 300,000 that was commanded by Saul when they first had the battle over the enemy, together with Samuel earlier over the Ammonites and Nahash, has dwindled. Now he had 3,000 men, 2,000 with Jonathan, and only 1,000 with 1,000 with Jonathan and 2,000 with Saul. Of course, Jonathan, by the by the grace of God, smote the garrison of the Philistines, and he defeated the enemy, and that aroused the Philistines. So verse 3 says, and the Philistines heard of it, because they managed to defeat them, this army of 1,000. And so the army of the Philistines now is on the alert. So they gather all their forces when they heard that they had smitten the garrison of the Philistines, and there they gathered themselves together to fight Israel. And so that's where we speak about the 30,000 chariots, the 6,000 horsemen, and the people, the enemy, as the sand which is on the seashore in multitude. And they came out and pitched in Michmash. Michmash was where Saul is, right? So this is the scene that is before us, verse 1 to 6. The second thought, the want of faith. Verse 7 to 23, we're going to look at where we can today. And some of the Hebrews went over Jordan to the land of Gad and Gilead. As for Saul, he was yet in Gilgal, and all the people followed him trembling. And he tarried 7 days according to the set time that Samuel had appointed. But Samuel came not to Gilgal, and the people were scattered from him. And Saul said, bring hither a burnt offering to me and a peace offering. And he offered the burnt offering, and it came to pass that as soon as he had made an end of the offering, the burnt offering, behold, Samuel came, and Saul went out to meet him, that he salute him. The failure of Saul was starkly evident. He did not fight God's battle God's way, by faith, trusting the Lord according to His word. Instead, he sought to do what he thought was the source of power by offering the sacrifice. Samuel did, and the battle was won earlier. The source of strength is the Lord. Saul could have sought the Lord in prayer and pleaded together with his men for God to intervene. The Lord would surely have saved them. Instead, they resorted to the arms of flesh. Paul says in 2 Corinthians 10 verse 4 to 6, for the weapons of our warfare are not carnal, but mighty through God to the pulling down of strongholds, casting down imaginations and every high thing that exalteth itself against the knowledge of God, and bringing into captivity every thought to the obedience of Christ, and having in a readiness to revenge all disobedience when your obedience is fulfilled. Spiritual battles are fought by the power of the Spirit of God. Zechariah 4 verse 6 says, then he spake unto me, saying, this is the word of the Lord unto Zerubbabel, saying, not by might, nor by power, but by my Spirit. You see, the Israelites were returning from their captivity, and at that time, the first temple has already been destroyed, and they had no means and resources, but God will help them to build the church or the temple by the strength that which God would give them. And as you think about what happened there in the church in Corinth, Alexander McCarran observed well. He says there was in Corinth's church a party, probably the Judaizers, which denied his authority and said bitter things about his character. That's the person of Paul. They apparently had contrasted the force of his letters and the feebleness of his bodily presence and speech. They insinuated that his buck was worse than his bite. their language put into plain English would be something like this. He's very bold at a distance. Let him come and face us and we will see a difference. Vaporing in his letters, he would be meek enough when he is here. Well, God will enable the Apostle Paul to declare the truth and refute the falsehoods against the gospel in the church of Corinth. The Apostle Paul first spoke to them to be in obedience to the truth of God. And as you think about it, you think about the battle that took place when the Syrians opposed the ministry of Elisha because he warned the king of Israel of the ambush of the enemy. The Syrians came to besiege the city of Dothan, which Elisha dwelt, and they sought to bring him to God's prophet. And here the Lord tells us how Elisha prayed to the Lord. And the Lord smote them with blindness, and smote them with blindness, and led them to the place that is called the Samaria, which is where the king was. Right? So what did the Lord do? Well, the Lord defeated the enemy that came to surround God's prophet. You see, God's prophet was only one person. And when, of course, he knew that the Lord was with him. And when his servant asked him earlier, what happened? The enemy has surrounded us, and he told them, be not afraid, the Lord is with us. There is more with us than it is with the enemy. And the Lord opened the eyes of Elisha's servant, and suddenly he saw a chariot, the army of the Lord surrounding the entire city, and know that the Lord was with them. And so they prayed, and the Lord struck the surrounding army with blindness, and he was able to lead the entire army to Samaria. That was where the king was. And when they reached Samaria, what did the prophet do? He asked to open their eyes, and suddenly they opened their eyes and realized that, we are surrounded. We are surrounded. They were supposed to be a big army, the Syrians that came and invaded, but there they are, surrounded by the Israelites, because they were struck blind and they were led to their captivity. And so when Elisha opened their eyes, they realized that, oops, we are in trouble, we are caught. And what happened when they were caught? Well, the king said, shall we smite them? Elisha told them, no, you feed them with bread and water and send them back. And the Bible tells us that the Syrians came no more into the land of Israel. Now, why did I say that? Well, I say that because if you know that the source of strength is in the Lord, and if the people would trust in the Lord, then you would see that the Lord has that power to overcome the enemy. For the weapons of our warfare are not carnal, but mighty through the pulling down of strongholds, casting down imaginations. What was in the heart of the people in Israel? Fear, isn't it? They were so frightened. Why were they so frightened? Because they were not looking to the Lord, to the strength of the Lord to help them. You see, that's why they were frightened. But when you have the Lord with you, should you be frightened? No. Paul says, casting down imaginations and every high thing that exalteth itself against the knowledge of God, and bring into captivity every thought to the obedience of Christ. So if we understood who God is and what He can do for us, then in the crunch time, will you be afraid? Well, the Lord tells us that we should not, isn't it? For we can do nothing against the truth, but for the truth, and therefore let us submit to God and His word. Verse 11. And Samuel said, What hast thou done? And Saul said, Because I saw that the people were scattered from me, and that thou camest not within the days appointed, and that the Philistines gathered themselves unto Michmash, therefore said I, the Philistines will come down now upon me to Gilgal, and I have not made supplication unto the Lord. I forced myself therefore and offered a burnt offering. Matthew Henry observed well, he says, Saul's offense in offering sacrifice before Samuel came. Samuel, when he had anointed him, had ordered him to tarry with him 7 days in Gilgal, promising that at the end of those days he would be sure to come to him, and both offer sacrifices for him and direct him what he should do. So that was the instruction. Perhaps that order, though inserted there, was given afterwards or given to him as a general rule to be observed in every public meeting at Gilgal. And here we said, as the Lord obliged him now to stay till Samuel came. And he would not have made so many excuses as he did for staying. This order Saul broke. When the 7th day came, he began to be impatient. He did not wait for the Lord, just as Uzziah did when he intruded into the temple of God, into the holy place, and there were 80 priests who tried to stop him, but he could not be stopped. He insisted because, well, he was filled with pride. And so Samuel came to him and spoke to him and said to him, Thou camest not within the days appointed, and therefore if anything was amiss, well, Samuel must bear the blame. You came late, whereas he did come according to his word before the 7 days had expired. Thus, Matthew Henry says, the scoffers of the latter days think the promise of Christ's coming is broken because he does not come in their time, though it is certain that he will come at the set time. So when he was charged with disobedience, he began to justify himself for what he had done, just as Adam and Eve did, isn't it? What did Eve say? Oh, no. He blamed. Who did he blame? Who did Samuel? Who did Eve blame? Blamed the serpent. Who did Adam blame? Adam blamed Eve. So where is did the buck stop? It didn't stop, isn't it? They began to hide, and then they began to not want to confront their own sin. So when he was charged with disobedience, he justified himself in what he had done, giving no sign at all of repentance. It is not sinning that ruins man, but sinning and not repenting, falling and not getting up again. That is the problem. Finding excuses for ourselves.